Hi, welcome. We have Grant from NaNoWriMo here, and we're gonna chat a little bit, and we're gonna do a fun little writing exercise at the end.
Yeah. How you doing, Grant?
It's a big writing exercise,
Oh,
not to intimidate people, but yeah,
awesome!
All right.
expect
Yeah.
fireworks.
And the good news is that you at home are going to be able to do the writing exercise with us, but Nick and I will be doing it first, so you can kind of make sure that there's no high barrier of entry here, because we're gonna probably embarrass ourselves a little bit.
Oh yeah. That's what it's all about. Being creative is about embarrassing yourself for a little bit. So
That is true. There's truth to that.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're going to start off really easy, kind of a softball question. Can you just explain to everyone what NaNoWriMo is?
In some ways, that's not a softball question, but I'll do my best to make it so, because NaNoWriMo is actually many things, but I think the shorthand for it, or the shorthand I use, is it's one part writing boot camp and it's one part writing party. And the writing boot camp part is that it's challenged to write 50,000 words of a novel in 30 days. So that's 1,677 words a day, which is challenging, but doable. And then the writing party part is that we really believe in creativity as a collaborative exercise. And so we have all sorts of ways to bring people into your novel writing experience. We have forums on our website where we get more than 1 million posts each November about every writing topic under the sun. We have 900 volunteers literally around the world who organize usually in-person writing events in like cafes and bookstores where people gather to write. This year it'll be all on Zoom because of the pandemic, second year in a row, but it's also great to gather that way. And then we're sort of in some ways all over the internet. Like we trend on Twitter throughout November. We actually have what we call a word sprints account, where because we're a global event, we have people around the world who will host like an hour of word sprints on Twitter word sprints account. And we're going to do a word sprint later here, but basically it's a challenge to write as much as you can through a timed writing exercise. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, there are a bunch of ways to take part in the NaNoWriMo party. But we really want people to realize their creative potential. We think that everyone has a story to tell, and it's important to give voice to that story and put it into the world. But as you guys know, there are heroes that don't go on the quest. Some of them stay home and they don't meet the challenge. And so we want to get those people out of their homes questing for their story.
I love that. I love that so much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So I'm guessing a little bit of your backstory is you are a writer yourself. What was the first story you ever wrote? What was it about?
It's strange. This is really strange. I do remember, well, I remember pre-writing before I knew how to write. I remember I got a whole idea for this fantastic series of books. I was probably 3 or 4. I remember running down the stairs to tell my mother, and she was on a phone call with a friend that lasted for like an hour or 2, or it seemed that. So she never got to hear that.
Yeah.
Great series idea. And I forgot it. So that could have been my breakthrough book. But then the first one I remember, my mother bought me. She was supportive in other ways of my writing endeavors. Fortunately, she got off the phone. And she bought this like little antique oak desk with a roll top. Anyway, I coveted it. I cherished it. It was like miniature for a kid. And so one day I sat down at that when I was 5 or 6. I must have just been learning to write letters. And I remember sitting down with a piece of paper and not knowing what to write. And I wrote this story, I guess because the paper was white. I wrote a story about when the color white ran out in the world. And I have no idea what the conflict was there or anything, but I wrote a story about that, So that's all I remember.
Wow.
Yeah, that's so profound.
That's incredible.
Very existential, right?
Yeah.
No
Very conceptual, avant-garde. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's funny because I, growing up, had a roll top desk in my house my whole
Yeah.
life. It was my grandma's like desk that she used in school. And to me, like I always seeing that, I always thought to myself, like, that's like the coolest, like most, like that's like the best place to sit down and write. And you actually had a roll top desk for a while.
I did. Yeah. I actually had a multiple roll top desks that I would get from like thrift shops for a few years that I really liked, but I didn't use them to write great stories. I just used them to do normal office work, which wasn't as inspiring.
We got to bring back the roll top desk. I think it's gone out of style, and yeah, let's start a roll top desk podcast together.
Yeah,
I love that.
That makes sense. Yeah, when you roll it closed, that's when the day's over.
And the theme of the podcast is when words run out, and we'll just go until we have nothing to say.
Yeah, we'll call it rolling with the punches.
Oh, there it is.
You guys are brilliant.
So obviously you started your writing career very young, being that you conceptualized the greatest series ever thought of at 3 or 4 years old. Mm-hmm. What inspired you, or like what inspires you to keep writing? So either what inspired you to become a writer, or like what inspires you to keep going?
It's a good question. In some ways I think I was a writer at birth, so there is some sort of like whatever genetic component, mystical, fateful component. But beyond that, because I was always attracted to books too. I'd go pick out books before I could read them from the bookshelf, big, huge books, and kind of just sit with them and pretend to read them. But now, I write to make meaning of life. I think that's the easiest answer. Like, I think it's everybody's duty as a writer is to be a witness to the truth and to write that truth. And so that can mean a lot of different things. You can do that as a fantasy writer, or you can write literary realism and achieve that. But in some way, you're like taking in the world and interpreting it and trying to articulate a world to make sense of it. I guess that's it in its most bare bones way. But yeah, it's all those things that, like people have said, like, why art? Why is it important? Well, it's like there to delight and instruct, it's there to entertain us, but also to learn about what this crazy life is all about.
Yeah. I always, neither Kyle or I would say are writers, especially in the sense, I don't know if we were born with the gene, maybe
you got the roll top desks.
That's
what
true.
You're talking about.
Yeah, that's all we need, really.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to ask, because I think just like from my perspective, maybe from like an outsider's perspective, I think the assumption is always like writers are like, as they're making their story or writing their novel, they're like in this like war zone, they're like in the trenches, they're in this creative battle. And I think that's always, I just wanted to ask you, like, do you think that that's kind of like unfounded? Like, do you think that's not really how it actually is? Because I've always kind of imagined it's like war. It's like you sit down in front of this blank sheet and you like beat yourself up until you have greatness. What are your opinions on that? How does NaNoWriMo fit into that, if at all?
Yeah, every single film that's about an author, the author is just a very unappealing character, just like, smoking cigarettes and drinking whiskey and coffee, right, and not sleeping and just throwing wads of paper across the room.
Yeah.
So they don't present it in a very appealing way. So I think there's an element of writing that is that, but I think that's also like a big part of mythology that's not necessarily true. And for me, it's like writing gives me joy. Like, that is the moment in the day when I'm most at peace, actually. And if I don't write, I am cranky during the rest of the day. That's when I start smoking the cigarettes and wadding up the paper, kicking people and stuff like that. So, and NaNoWriMo, I think, exists to counter that stereotype as well. We try to put joy into writing and whimsy, and you'll notice a lot of the materials we put out in the world are very whimsical. And that's part of the reason that writing NaNoWriMo is one part writing party, is that we bring people together to have fun writing. And what's amazing about NaNoWriMo is that, we've had, hundreds, thousands of people like publish their books in different ways. And we've had best-selling authors and award-winning authors, all that, very proud of that. But we also have people who just show up to write with their friends, and that's a meaningful experience unto itself. So when you said that you guys weren't writers, I would say, no, you are writers, because the definition of being a writer is writing. And so that's what NaNoWriMo is all about, is opening those gates to everybody, because everybody is a creator, everybody is a writer, everybody has stories to tell. And so we really just want to invite people in and support them and nourish their stories to put them in the world. So I think of it sometimes like people will say like, "Oh, what happens to all those novels?" As if novels are only worth something if they've been published and you earn money from them. But
Right.
we don't ask people who knit sweaters like, "Oh, how many have you sold?" Or what, how much how much that stocking cap sell for?
Yeah.
Like you can play the ukulele, you can knit sweaters, you can cook, you can do all these things just for the wonderful pleasure of it.
Yeah, well, I really like how you put
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I also like earlier on when you were explaining NaNoWriMo as kind of like a boot camp for writing. There's always that like tension between you kind of have like a deadline, right? Like you even broke it down to the word count per day
Yeah.
during November. It's like, how do you balance that as sort of you know as a creative and as a program that's trying to chaperone people into creativity? You have like that, like the standard and kind of like the dry cut, like here's the quota, so to speak. But then it's also like let yourself sort of like run free within those constraints. Like how do you balance the two as you're kind of going through NaNoWriMo, like the programs?
That's a great question for a non-writer. Um, actually, no, no, it's a really good question because, like, I mean, the goal deadline part of NaNoWriMo, that is part of the beauty of it. It is, we call a goal and a deadline a creative midwife, and it's because you've got that goal and then a daily progress that you're accountable for. So you've got to keep pushing the story moving forward. You got to focus on progress, and that's part of exactly what you're talking about. Like, where do you find the creativity and the freedom? Well, I think like the thing about constraints is that there's more freedom in a constraint than there is in like an expanse without boundaries. And so that's the beauty of NaNoWriMo, is it provides this goal and a deadline that really pushes people, and within that constraint, which is again like 1,700 words a day, no joke, you got to write a lot, and it's a very like almost extreme sport of writing in a way. And so that's where you're really pushing the limits. And that's, when I first did NaNoWriMo, that was part of why I did it, because I was a very slow, methodical, kind of overly ponderous writer, and I just wanted to shake up my creative process. I asked myself, did I determine my creative process, or did it just kind of find me? And I think it was the latter. And so I think everybody should experiment with their creative process. And when I did NaNoWriMo, I thought that focusing on progress, kind of practicing a more improvisational writing style, opened up a lot of interesting possibilities that wouldn't have existed otherwise. So it's just a different type of writing for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Do you normally start at the very beginning of a story when you start writing, or do you start in like the middle and then work both ways?
That's a great question. Yeah. You know what? I've never been asked that, but I think it's a really important story, because I think too many people actually approach novel writing in a very linear fashion, as if you can't approach it in any other way. And I know, James Scott Bell wrote a writing book that is on my list to read. It's been on my list for years, so someday I got to make it there. But the title of the book is, or the theme of it is, writing a novel from the middle out. And so I think it's an interesting way. Like I think I always tell people I always start at the beginning, to tell you the truth. I mean, I always need to start at the beginning, but especially during NaNoWriMo, I and a lot of writers, we skip to other parts of it. And so like, if I'm kind of stuck in the first third, but I know there's a scene that's, whatever, several chapters ahead, I might jump ahead and write that, just to keep writing. But also, if you kind of jump, well, one, it's like great to write what you want to write. That's like really creatively nourishing. And while doing that, then I might be able to go back to the thing I was having trouble with, and it might be all new, and I might have answers. So I think that's a great creative process to do in anything in life. I actually think like there's a lot of value in being able to jump from project to project, as long as you don't do it too much, but to find that balance where one thing is feeding the other thing.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about it, like whenever I've thought about a story, I usually think about the epic thing that's going to happen first. And then, so it's like, I think about the epic thing, but then I feel like I have to start the context first to like build up like all of the background of the story. But by the time I get to the thing that was epic and got me excited, I'm actually kind of bored of the story, because everything else is like context and leading up to this moment. So I'm like, maybe if you start with the thing you're excited about, you can actually with more fervor build the context around that thing.
I think you hit it. I mean, I think they always say one of the maxims of writing is start the story in the middle. Don't start it at the beginning. And I think it's also about trusting your reader. Your reader actually is doing a lot to fill in the gaps and filling in that context. So you don't need it all explained. And one way to create suspense and intrigue is not to tell it all, to let people to kind of hint at things and to allow people to discover things like later on. So yeah.
Yeah, what do you think? We're kind of talking about the experience of the writer a lot as it comes to like forming stories and unleashing your creativity, having constraints, all those things. Do you think there is sort of like obviously we're inspired by the hero's journey with our journals. Do you think that there is sort of a writer's journey kind of in the background of like a NaNoWriMo, like, and what is that typically like? Is it kind of like by day 19, you're like, ready to quit writing altogether and become a painter or something? Or like, what does that journey look like as time goes on?
We've produced a lot of painters. A lot of painters have come out of NaNoWriMo. A lot of
That's the like, if you're tired of writing, you can go paint something.
Amazing how many painters come out of November.
Right.
No, it's a good question, because I think like, NaNoWriMo is only 30 days, but it is sort of like, most novels take a year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes 10 years to write. But that 30 days is a kind of condensed version of that whole journey. And so I think like what happens a lot of times is that people get super excited about their novels, and that first week or 10 days is like, woohoo, and they're just riding the wave and everything's going great. But then in the middle of the month is when I have super tough problems with the middle of novels, the middle of the month for NaNoWriMo. And I think it's pretty pervasive, and it's easy to people call it the muddy middle for a reason. It's because people get stuck in the mud there. And so that's the toughest part of a novel for me. And kind of once you get through that middle, you can then find another burst. And that's why I always tell people, I'm like, don't quit in the middle. Like, just somehow, and that's when you want to skip chapters, write what excites you, get through it, and then you'll find a new momentum. And that's a lot about what, per the journey part of what you said, that's a lot of what finishing a novel is about, is that you're going to just hit these bad patches, and they might just feel interminable, and you'll question yourself, you'll doubt yourself, you might hate yourself. But then you have to trust in the story, and that you're going to find that momentum, which will be refreshing and lead you to new answers.
Yeah, like, because we totally have the same, I guess, difficulty, I think, with chaperoning heroes, like past that first. Really, for us, it's about 7 days. We kind of believe that if we can get a hero to complete the first 7 daily pages, get to that first chapter break. Chapters is what we call them in the journal. There's like a way higher chance they'll continue on with it, and more importantly, see some serious consistency and life change with whatever they're trying to do. Like, and do you kind of break that news to people on the front end? Are you kind of like, hey, like, you're really excited now, this is going to suck very soon, here's what you need to start thinking about to prepare yourself for that time? Like, what are some of those tips, I guess?
That's I think it's good to acknowledge that, and we do acknowledge it, but sometimes I wonder if we should do it more, like that we should literally say, like, 50% of you who've signed up, like 300,000 people who signed up to write in November, 150,000 of you will not be with us 3 days from now.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of people literally quit the first week. And I think actually what happens is they haven't prepared themselves. They don't have a mindset to succeed, because I think people sometimes think they sign up for NaNoWriMo and they just expect that 2 hours a day of writing time is just going to kind of fall in their lap. But the thing is, you have to go out and find that time, and you have to strategize for that time. And you have to look at your life and look at where you're going to open up for those pockets of time, or what you might have to give up. And so I always think it's about developing. I always say, writing a novel, it's a lot about writing ability and creating suspense and having a great story, all those things. It's also about time management. It's about really unsexy parts of life. And that's what leads to success in the end. And I have no idea at this point if this is answering your question. So if you want to guide me back to the path of the journey, feel free.
No, that was great. That was great. No, yeah, I really like the way you put that. It made me think of the fear tactic of look to your left, look to your right.
Yeah.
Both of those people won't be with us by the end of the month.
Yeah,
that's
whatever.
right.
Yeah.
But your good friend Roy, no, he's
Yeah.
dropping out tomorrow.
Drop it in. Yeah. No, I think I like that. I like the way you put that too. Like it's the unsexy parts oftentimes that lead to the like, sexy successes,
Yeah.
if you want to call that.
You're going to put that quote in your next journal, right?
Yeah.
Well, it'll probably be on the first episode of Roll Tide. What is
Yeah.
it? Roll
Rolling
the
with the
punches.
punches. Yeah.
Roll with the punchlines podcast.
Oh, okay.
Just
Yeah. Okay.
keep
Good.
the
It'll be
name.
on our podcast.
Yeah. No, I really like that. I think that, people, well, let me ask you this. Do you find that it's the people that are like maybe less talented of a natural writer or creative, but are better at time management, tend to do better at the end of the month? Or do you think it's the people that are super creative, and maybe not as good at time management, but maybe they just love writing, whatever it is? Like, have you seen a pattern over the years, of like kind of who ends up finishing usually, or who has a better time maybe versus who has a harder time?
Yeah, I don't know enough about I don't identify people that well as like good at time management, bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think every novel is different for a writer. Some novels you're super excited about and some you're less excited about. But I do think it helps to have a novel you're really excited about and a purpose to writing that novel.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, like especially now in October, I'll talk to a lot of people who have 3, 4, 5 different ideas they're choosing from. And sometimes I'll hear like, oh, this is the novel I should write, or this is the novel that, like vampire novels are in vogue now, so I should write that vampire novel. So they'll give me different reasons, like kind of logical reasons or some sort of reasons why they should write the novel. But in the end, you should write the novel that's in your heart, the one that's really calling you, the one you want to write. And I think other than like time management, I said the more sexy version of success is writing the story that matters to you, the story that's calling you. And I think that will create, that drive and that passion, that'll also like lead to opening up the time, right? Like that's when you're going to be able to say no to that party on Friday night because you want to stay in and write your novel, and I'll just say it's only for a month. You don't have to say no to that party for the rest of your life. It's just a matter of finishing it in a month. But I think like having a passion helps a lot.
Well, you guys have a pretty large roadblock with Thanksgiving, because like people's family come in, they're taking time off work, they're traveling. There's probably been many words written for NaNoWriMo in airport terminals across the world. How do you inspire people to kind of prepare for those impending roadblocks that are kind of non-negotiable?
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that, because I was just thinking about Hugh Howey. I don't know if you know him, but he wrote the sci-fi fantasy series Wool during NaNoWriMo, and he became this huge self-publishing sensation and then huge publishing sensation, and now it's being produced into a show like Rashida Wall. Why am I spacing her name? Anyway, Rashida. You guys know her last name?
Jones?
Rashida Jones.
Rashida Jones, yeah.
Yeah, she's going to be starring in it. Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway,
whoa.
the reason I mentioned him is not because of that, but because like when he's done NaNoWriMo a bunch of times, and he wrote this essay about how he would be like waiting for a cab at the airport, and while he was waiting for the cab, he'd be writing, his novel. And so, yeah, we've heard a lot of stories about people writing their novels in weird places. And again, that's like the time management component, is that sometimes, you can't wait for the ideal writing circumstances to write. Sometimes you have to just write, and so that's what opening up that 2 hours a day, that's what I need to write. Sometimes you have to write on your lunch break. Sometimes, I'm a morning writer, but sometimes I have to write in the evening, so you have to and Thanksgiving, sometimes you have to ask other people to cook the whole meal. I'm kind of joking, but that's kind of true too. And that is part of NaNoWriMo. We advise people to tell your friends and family to ask them for help, and just say, hey, I'm doing this great creative thing for a month, and it would be great if I could, slack a little bit on keeping the house clean. And if you could help me with the dishes and the laundry, or help me with like cooking Thanksgiving, or maybe skipping Thanksgiving this year. I don't know. But yeah, Thanksgiving can be a block, especially if you're the person in charge of it. That's a lot of extra work at the end of the month. But it can be an opportunity to write too, because it's a 4-day weekend for a lot of people. So
yeah,
who knows? And the thing is like life happens. It doesn't matter. Every month's got its own version of a Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So every month is going to have something. So it doesn't really matter when.
That's true.
That's a good point.
Yeah, we would definitely call that, calling upon your allies for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I actually really like that, like this kind of making it a little more communal. Like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm trying to do this. Will you help me by picking up the slack? It's like a really, and that's
Yeah.
a little more accountable too, right?
Yeah, it's actually really important because I think so much so much of American culture revolves around this like kind of like notion of a hero doing it all by themselves and without a
Mhm.
community of support, and I think what we're learning is that no, we need to be more community minded. We need a community support for like pandemics, climate change, and writing a novel, and so they all
Yeah.
go hand in hand. And I think the more we kind of create a community support, the more successful we're going to be.
That's
Yeah,
great.
I agree.
I have one more question, and I think we need to move into the writing thing, right? Is that okay?
Yeah, we're gonna ask a question. And I was also gonna ask one last one.
Oh, you go ahead.
Kind of.
You go ahead.
Well, mine was I was just gonna say if you were to speak to someone face to face who is on the fence about doing NaNoWriMo, what would you say? How would you either convince them to do it or maybe convince them not to do it if you don't feel like they're really ready for it?
Yeah. So one, I'd say, there's a grand prize, which is a roll top desk for everyone who finishes
Right, of
50,000
course.
words.
All
Yeah.
right.
And then after that, false promise, because I do promise, make a lot of false promises. No, the thing I hear from most people who are on the fence or don't want to do it is usually they say, I'm not a creator, I'm not a writer, or I don't have enough time. And so for that first part, I'm not a creator, I'm not a writer, I would tell them what I told you guys earlier is that we're all writers, we're all storytellers. Telling stories is how we make meaning in the world,
Mm.
And so I think you're a writer in the act of writing. And so again, it's I mean, as people who are writers and interested in writing, I think they should do NaNoWriMo once just to experiment with the creative process. That's how I started. So you don't have to love it. You don't have to embrace it. It doesn't have to work for you, but it's worth doing once because it is like, I think it's a very valid way to create, not just writing a novel, but in other parts of life. It's a creative process that just like works and is good for people. So yeah, but the roll top desk, if they're not doing it, I mean, how could you turn that down?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the real reason we're all here.
Yeah.
That was a great question. That was pretty much the same question I was going to ask. So that's perfect.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thanks for kind of appeasing our random questions. And now I'm excited to get creative now.
I'm kind of nervous. Yeah.
I'm nervous, but I'm pumped.
I may have to return all my roll top desks after this.
I actually wrote a story like a month ago.
Yeah.
I told you about this. I wrote a story about an ant because our kitchen got infested with ants. I wrote a story about an ant that walked into my backpack, and then I flew to Arizona, and the experience of an ant going from Washington to Arizona.
Wow.
That was my whole.
All right. Well, I didn't realize you buried the lead so much. I'm way behind in this
That's
one.
pretty good. That's pretty good. Very Stuart Little, I think, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. You gotta love that though. Gotta love the ant. Like, whoa.
That's true.
I'm in Phoenix.
Yeah, like, because think about it, like,
and apparently have a pretty sophisticated education of geography.
Well, because I was thinking, if an ant went from our kitchen to my bedroom, that'd be like a crazy journey. Like that'd be like Frodo going across like all of Mordor. So imagine going from my room to Arizona. That's even crazier.
Yeah, it's like us going to Mars or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, I digress.
Yeah. Not even a pair of sandals in the suitcase.
All right.
So you guys want to do some writing?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to start out this exercise with a quote from one of my favorite wise people who ever lived on the planet, somebody I refer to a lot and read a lot every day. I'm sure you all know her as Grandma Tala. You guys know Grandma Tala?
Have to. Oh yeah.
She's right here in my newest Quest journal.
Ooh, wow, that's a nice journal.
It's a very nice journal. Yeah, I really recommend it. Grandma Tala says, sometimes the world seems against you. The journey may leave a scar. The scars can heal and reveal just who you are. So that's important to think about. And I think like what that gets at in life is that, the world seems against you, meaning the world can serve up a lot of conflicts, a lot of frustrations, but you're still on this journey. And even though the journey might wound you, might leave scars, That's how you learn who you are, and those scars will likely heal in the process. And so, think about scars, think about conflicts, think about journeys, and the writing exercise. I'll just go back and explain this NaNoWriMo exercise. Is that we oftentimes do word sprints. So at those write-ins I was talking about, where people gather together in bookstores and cafes or online at our NaNoWriMo Word Sprints account. It'll be like a 5-minute timed writing exercise. Sometimes it's 10 or 15, but we'll just do 5 here. And the premise is that, and I would give you a prompt, and the premise is that you write, and you just write. Like, you don't think about punctuation, spelling, doesn't matter the quality of your sentences, you just get the words on the page. And here's the thing, I've led hundreds of these, probably thousands of people have taken part. I've never had a person not write. And this is the premise, is that we all, writer's block to me doesn't exist. And this like experiment, it proves it, it's scientific. And so writer's block is something we make up. There's always a way to open that door and get words on the page because we're storytelling creatures. And so you guys have a great premise here with the journey. Tolstoy said, I can't quote this exactly like I could quote Grammatala because I've memorized so much of Grammatala's wisdom, but Tolstoy said, all stories, there are two stories. Every story is one of these 2 stories. Either a person comes to town or a person leaves town. So both of those are about a journey of some sort. And so every novel in its way is a journey. But sometimes, and this is like what you were saying, Kyle, I think earlier, was that sometimes like the writer is so putting in so much context and background that they're not really getting to the conflict. And the thing is that when you go to a town or leave a town, you're involved in a conflict. And it's part of what Grammatala is about, talking about that journey that's going to scar you. And so for the next 5 minutes, just think of the main character in your novel or a character, and think about, what is that conflict? What is that obstacle that the person has to get over? And are they fearful of it? Are they the kind of like reckless, courageous person that runs headlong into it? Are they methodical? How do they approach that conflict? But really, I think the main thing is to identify that conflict. They say that like when you write a novel, you should have the conflict present in the first page or 2. So you also want to push that conflict up and make sure it's at the start. So yeah, 5 minutes, write about your main character and the conflict he, she, or they has.
All right, here we go.
All
Are you
right.
starting a timer or are we starting a timer?
I'll do it. I'll do the timing.
All right.
It's going to be a rough estimate to 5 minutes because I'm getting out my phone. about halfway through. And stop. How'd you guys do?
It was pretty good. I don't know if I got a full thing going, but I definitely wrote something.
Yeah, I don't know if I wrote that many words.
How many did you write?
Let's see.
I don't know. I'm using the Notes app on my computer, which is not the best way to do this. See if I can.
I wrote 209 words.
So 209 words in 5 minutes. Let's just do some simple math here. So in 50 minutes, if you kept up with that pace, that'd be 2,000 words in a day. You know, now let's say, because I do like doing, writers for some reason rarely do math, and they really should, because 200 words a day, because I think one of the principles of NaNoWriMo is to teach you how much you can do if you just write regularly. So 200 words a day is 6,000 words in a month, and that's 72,000 words in a year. And so if you open up just 5 to 10 minutes a day of writing, you can write a novel in a year. And and many writers done that. I mean, Toni Morrison, I always tell the story about her. She was a single mom in New York City. She had a couple kids. She worked all day. She came home, fed them, helped them with their homework, put them to bed. She had 15 minutes a day to write. And that's how she wrote her first novel, was just writing in that 15 minutes a day, 15 minutes when she was totally exhausted. And so that is one of the lessons of NaNoWriMo. So that's one of the lessons of this writing exercise too. So they might not be great gems, but oftentimes they are too. And what I thought was interesting with both of you is, once again, you guys both wrote.
Yeah. I only wrote 135 words.
Yeah.
So I'm a little slower, but
hey, that's fine.
It's and it doesn't matter how slow or fast you are. But 135, I'm not going to do the math with that, but you can do it. I can do some very, very good math. And so, I mean, and the thing is, part of that writing exercise too is to encourage people to have fun. And so sometimes and to be able to joke about your writing. And so sometimes at NaNoWriMo write-ins, people will share their oddest or worst sentences, so they'll poke fun at themselves, which is actually a very good creative tool as a writer, is that it's not about writing the perfect best sentence. It's just about writing and having fun writing. And sometimes by allowing yourself to write a bad sentence, you actually write a good sentence. That's the irony of it. Yeah.
It's funny.
Should we have to share? Are we going to share what we wrote, or
I'm a
is
little
that against the
afraid.
rules?
If you want, do you want to share a sentence?
Yeah, you share a sentence.
Should just one sentence?
Well, share whatever you want.
Yeah, cool. So the premise is there is a boy named Tommy, and he looks forward to recess every single day, especially lunch recess, because that's the longest recess. But everyone in his class has been doing the monkey bars, but he can't do it. And so a girl named Nancy is making fun of him because he can't do the monkey bars. So I'll just read this part. As Tommy stands up and approaches the door to the playground, he gets a nudge from Nancy, who says, "Well, are you going to finally do the monkey bars today, Tommy? Everyone in class has already done them." "You're the last one," she said in a jocular tone. Tommy looks back to the girl who towers over him and mutters, "I haven't done it yet because my mom keeps packing me a stick of butter for lunch and makes my hands all slippery." All the while knowing he is the one slipping sticks of butter into his lunch pail every single day.
Aw, that's great. So you got two great things there. You got the conflict is like that he isn't part of the group, right? It's like peer pressure because he's not doing what they all can do. But you have him like seeking for evasive, interesting like tactics in order to like allow him to kind of at least offer a way to try to belong or be, I guess normal. Yeah, that was really good.
That's great.
Thank you.
My turn?
Yeah.
So mine's about an ant that crawled into my backpack. No, I'm kidding. I'll just read a few sentences. Mine, I don't think is as specific, but cool. The fire spreaders were never to be spoken to. And even more terrifyingly, if they never were presented an offering, they burned your village to the ground. This year, it was my job to present the offering, and all the elders in town refused to cooperate with the cruel tradition. Their stubbornness was noble, but futile. The fire starters don't care what your ethics are. If there isn't an offering, your town is burned.
Dang.
That's all I have.
Yeah, it's dark.
Yeah.
So mine's a little lighter than yours is. A little more family friendly.
That's a good conflict though.
Yeah.
Very, very, something is at stake. Something very tangible is at stake there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
People's lives and homes, and then what is an offering that's like a good enough offering, and
I know.
your community isn't helping you there. You got no allies, right?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I just thought of the term fire spreaders, and I was like, let's roll with that. I still don't know what they are, but that was a lot of fun. I didn't realize I could do that.
Yeah,
That was really fun.
Yeah.
Well, that is part of the premise of NaNoWriMo too, is that the founder, Chris Beatty, has a book called No Plot, No Problem. And one part of creativity that's really valuable is that sometimes you do go down a path, you don't really know what it is, right? It's like the fire spreaders. What are they? Who are they? Why are they fire spreaders? All those questions you'll find out in writing the novel. And sometimes that's the fun of it, is just to go with something. And sometimes that's the brilliance of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing that. Yeah, this is gonna be pre-recorded, so we'll have to find everyone's favorite sentences, and maybe we'll send them to you or something like that, so you can.
That'd be cool. I'd love to see
experience that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Grant, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I really appreciate your wisdom and your insight. I always feel like writing is kind of this like pretentious, scary group of people, but you make it very warm and inviting and down to earth. Which is really nice. And honestly, it's funny that we spoke to you, not too long ago, and we were able to support your guys' fundraiser and stuff like that. And it's honestly been one of the coolest things I think we've been able to do with the Heroes Journal. So thank you for that opportunity. Sincerely. It's honestly been hugely beneficial and a lot of fun. So
likewise for us, hugely beneficial and fun. And we love them. I love looking at mine. I'll just put, in case any of the viewers out there don't have one, this is high quality stuff. This is like something I feel creative just in the act of picking it up. And it's everything that NaNoWriMo is, everything I talked about today. It's full of creativity and accountability and goal setting and finding your allies and whimsy and many more things. So love the things you guys do.
Just really quick, just like a quick plug. I'm going to make you do a quick plug. If I have a creative quest that involves writing a novel and I want to do that program with NaNoWriMo, how do I sign up? Where do I find the information?
There you go. Yeah, that's a good question. Go to NaNoWriMo.org. You sign up there. It's free. It'll always be free. We want it to be free because we want everybody to have access and be able to tell their story. And it's basically like a social media site, is that once you sign up, you'll go through and you'll fill out your profile and you'll tell us the title of your novel. And you can like find friends on the website. You can go and chat with people in the forums. You don't have to. Some people love the social aspect. Some people still want to be like a writer writing alone. So, but the thing that's really, I think the most important part of the NaNoWriMo site is, I always kind of joke that the shorthand for it is it's Fitbit for writers. And that's because you're putting in your daily word count. So if all you wrote today was 209 words, that's what you put. But you see your little bar chart graph go up. It put you that much closer to your 50,000 word goal. And people get obsessed with this, you know? And so, and we have a whole like badge, you know, system in place where people like, you know, work for badges, like streak badges or milestone badges, whole bunch of badges that we give out. So it's like a, you know, it's like gaming, you know, you level up. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And so I think that really motivates people in general. But they say, I think beyond the badges, which are plenty motivating, I think people just work just to get that bar chart, you know, staying in rhythm with what they have to achieve.
That's super cool. I didn't know you guys had that. That's an incredible resource.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, Grant, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for speaking with us and for sharing your wisdom with the fine people here at our first ever AstoriaCon.
Yeah.
All right.
You have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.